How's everyone doing? In this video, we're going to take a look at your 11B notes having to deal with the civilizations of the Aztecs, the Incans, and the Mayans. For starters, before we start here, I just want to make sure we understand where we are time frame wise. We've spent most of the year so far focusing on Europe, North Africa, and Asia, and we're going to take a couple of days, basically just this presentation, to talk about other parts of the world. Just to give you an idea, the time frame when the Aztecs, Incans, and the Mayans are developing in the Americas, just so you know time-wise, this is what we're talking about. This is Middle Ages Europe at the same time. So, Middle Ages Europe, our feudal system is going on, so we're talking around that 800 to 1200-ish time period, okay? That's about the time frame that we're referencing when we talk about the rise of the Aztecs, the Incans, and the Mayans. They'll fade out at different times, like the Mayans will fade out before the Europeans get here. The Aztecs and the Incans will actually still be around when the Spanish and the Portuguese arrive, and they will interact with them, but they come to rise during this time period. So let's talk about each of these civilizations. Remember, guys, in a video, I'm going to move a little bit. If I'm ever moving too fast, you can always pause it, rewind it, and do all of those fun things that YouTube allows you to do. Alright, so the first group we're going to talk about is the Mayans. The Mayans are located in Mexico and Central American rainforest on a part of land that is known as the Yucatan Peninsula. Alright. It is, if I skip back here, it is that little peninsula thing that sticks right out towards Cuba and Florida and separates the Gulf of Mexico from the Caribbean Sea. Chichen Itza was the central city of the Mayans. Another city that's important to remember is Tikal. And the Mayans were organized into city-states that were ruled by a king. Okay, this is very much like another civilization that we have talked about. It's a lot like Greece. Alright, Greece was also organized into city-states that were ruled by individual kings. Now, the reason that they're similar and the reason their development is similar is because the impact of their geography on each other. In Greece, we had the impact of mountainous countryside, not a lot of land that you could farm because it's hard to farm on the side of a mountain. So you had city-states developing in the small pockets of land where you could farm. Well, now you ask yourself, how do the mountains of Greece relate to the rainforests of Mexico and Central America? Well, guys, a rainforest has a heavy canopy which will block out light and very dense vegetation. It's very hard to grow crops when they don't have sunlight access regularly and when there's not a whole lot of land to put said crops on. So the Mayans are going to develop city-states also in these small patches of rainforest where there's enough cleared land for them to be able to farm. So that is the similarity between the Mayans and the Greeks. Alright, Chichen Itza right out there. Again, like I said, the Yucatan Peninsula sticking out towards Cuba and Florida, separating the Gulf of Mexico from the Caribbean Sea. Now you'll notice here in Chichen Itza we have pyramids. Now these pyramids are different than pyramids we had in Egypt. Egyptian pyramids are perfect square-based pyramids. These pyramids here are what we call step pyramids, as in they are made in steps. Alright? And the other pyramid difference between the Egyptians and the Mayans is the function of the pyramid. The Egyptian pyramids are giant gravestones. They are tombs for their pharaohs. Mayan pyramids are temples for which they worship at. Another example. Mayan economy is based mainly on agriculture and trade. They would grow food, they would trade with neighbors, and what they would trade was their agricultural surplus. This is a lot like early Mesopotamian civilization. If you guys remember, Mesopotamian civilization between the Tigris and the Euphrates River developed as city-states that were independent of each other, and as they developed agricultural surpluses, they would swap my extra peppers for your extra corn, my extra oranges for your extra apples, and they would start trading that way. And eventually they became an empire, but that was how things began. The Mayan economy is very similar. These are the types of things that they grew. Now, Mayan religion is polytheistic. They believe in many gods. And in case you've forgotten, religions that are polytheistic, they use their gods to explain natural phenomena. So they can't, the Greeks are the best example. The Greeks don't understand why lightning happens, so they use the argument that Zeus was angry and hurling lightning bolts. Alright? They can't understand why the sun marches across the sky, so Apollo pulled it with his chariot. Alright, all polytheistic religions, generally speaking, use gods to explain things they cannot scientifically understand. The Mayans are the same. They're going to worship in pyramids. Like I said, they're similar pyramids to Egypt. The difference being that the pyramids in Egypt are tombs and the shape and style of the pyramids. And in Mayan religion, they do practice human sacrifice. So they do sacrifice humans to the gods. It's very ritualistic. A couple of our sports have actually descended from these Mayan sacrifice rituals. A form of basketball, a form of lacrosse can actually be traced back to the Mayans as part of their celebrations that led to human sacrifice. Alright, moving on. Aztecs. The Aztecs are located in the arid valley of central Mexico. Now, when I say arid, I mean hot and dry. And when I say dry, I don't mean absolutely no water at all. When we say dry, we're talking about rainfall. You can still have rivers in dry areas, but what we don't have is a ton of rainfall. Alright, which is going to make irrigation incredibly important when you do have access to a river. You're not getting the rain to fall down, you're going to have to move the water in yourselves. Tenochtitlan was the central Aztec city, and the Aztecs were ruled as one civilization by an emperor. So centrally controlled, ruled by an emperor. This is a lot like Persia or Rome. So keep that in mind when you guys think about Aztec government. As we see Tenochtitlan a little bit farther up into central Mexico. Now what you notice here about Tenochtitlan is you see that the city seems almost to be out in the middle of a lake. You've got this water, you've got these bridge-like things. They're called causeways, first off. Causeways. Alright, another picture, pyramids, more pyramids as you can see, similar to in design to the Mayans. Now, this isn't the best picture here, but you can see Lake Texcoco down here. And this is the drawing that I prefer when it comes to the city of Tenochtitlan. I'm going to shade a little here to help you out. That's water. This is water. What's special about Tenochtitlan is, as you see as I'm shading, it's located in the middle of, hang on. As you can see, it's located in the middle of all of this water. Now, you ask yourself, how did they get so lucky to find an island in the middle of the lake that they could turn into a beautiful city like that? Well, they didn't find the island in the middle of the lake. The Aztecs built this island in the middle of the lake, very much like has been done with islands in, or the off the shores of Dubai. The Aztecs piled up sand and stone until eventually these causeways were formed and they were able to form this island. It was great for protection. It was a technological marvel, and it's a crying shame that the Spanish destroyed it. Aztec economy is again based on agriculture. Now, if you think back, we said arid, so pardon the bells. We said arid climates, so not a lot of rain, so again, we need irrigation for agriculture to work. Alright, and the Aztecs are going to raise a specific type of corn known as maize that is actually successful there. Example of their irrigation. And then religion, Aztecs are polytheistic. Again, belief in many gods. Like the Mayans, they worship at pyramids. And like the Mayans, they have human sacrifice. Now, their human sacrifice is based on warfare. They conquer neighboring tribes. They take slaves, and the purpose of those slaves is to sacrifice them. And our last group here, the Incans. The Incans are located in the Andes Mountains of South America. This is present-day Chile and Peru. Parts of Argentina, Bolivia, and Colombia as well. Machu Picchu is the central Incan city, as well as Cuzco. Both are important, as you can imagine, being up in the mountains. Incan government. The Incans are ruled by an emperor with the aid of governors. So we have one central emperor, and then he has help in localities. He has local rulers who represent his will. Guys, this is a lot like Persia, where if you remember we had the Persian emperor, King Darius or whoever. We had the Persian king, and then the Persians had satraps, regional governors that were in charge of specific areas. and were responsible for making those decisions in the ruler's name. They do the same thing. We have a magic word for this: bureaucracy. Alright? Now, the Incans have a lot of territory. It's actually 4,500 miles long, the Incan Empire, which, just to give you an idea, guys, it's 3,000 miles, roughly, between Washington, D.C. and Los Angeles. So you could fly all the way across the United States and halfway back, and that's how long the Incan Empire is at this time. Alright? Incan economy is based on agriculture. Agriculture being tough in mountain environments, as we've said, the Greeks couldn't figure it out. The Incans come up with a technological achievement that allows them to farm in such a situation. They create what are known as terraces. And what these terraces are is they literally cut the mountains to create flat areas, as you can see here. One flat step, there's another one. There's another one. There's another one. And so on and so forth. They create these flat areas so that they can farm. Typical crops for them. Incan religion, they're also polytheistic. They are not big believers in sacrifice. They do not do the human sacrifice thing. Again, the gods of the Incans are based on powers of nature, but they hold a special place for the gods of the sun and the moon. Yes, llamas. Alright. That is Machu Picchu. And again, another example of our terraces. As you can see, they're not super duper wide, but they will function. They will allow you to grow a couple of rows of crops on each one and have plenty of harvest. More shots of terraces. Water was provided for by the mountains. Usually when we have water, we have snow melt and rainfall. Now, the other thing that the Incans will do is, because they're up in the mountains, and because they have such a vast empire, they're going to do what we've talked about with other empires, where they come up with a way to improve travel. We talked about the Persians, the Romans, all of these other groups that, as part of their making the empire smaller and trying to improve trade and the time it takes news to travel from one empire to the other, is they build roads. The Incans do the same. Now, not that. They are crude roads. They're not roads that I necessarily want to drive on, but they are roads nonetheless. When you're in a mountainous area, anything is helpful. Steps to go up the side of a mountain. Again, not the greatest, but something to help make travel a little easier. Bridges across areas. Alright, and then your achievements. The achievements that you need to know for all three of these groups. The Incans build their road system. That's their lone achievement. Otherwise, all three of them come up with calendars, mathematics systems, and a form of writing, all on their own and all independently of each other. There is some interaction, but it's very limited between these groups. So the fact that they're able to come up with all of these is a sign that that's potentially a pattern for the development of civilization.